Our guest tonight is Sara Jones. By day, she is the executive director of the Great North Innocence Project, but she's also on the search committee with roughly a dozen others to help select the next Minneapolis police chief, a job they hope to fill by the end of July. It is a tall order, of course, that involves not just this committee, but the community. I have to ask, how did you end up on this committee and who else is on it?
I learned through the grapevine that my city council person had recommended me because she and I have had many conversations over the last few years about policing and public safety.
There's a lot of people involved in making this decision, and we'll get into the role of the community in a second. But talk about your committee's role. My understanding is you're kind of a liaison of information back to people who then continue the search process.
There is a search firm that the city engaged after interviewing some search firms, and it's called Public Sector Search and Consulting. They will do the actual search and recruiting of potential candidates after developing the job description. And then we will interview a select number of candidates, maybe 10 or 12. And from that, we will recommend 2 or 3 finalists to the mayor's office, and the mayor will then select one of those folks, and the city council will have to approve the final selection. So it's quite a lengthy process.
You asked for, community input, and I'm curious how that community feedback will eventually be factored into the selection process.
Well, there are multiple layers of community feedback involved. The search firm itself is doing stakeholder meetings with certain groups and entities that were recommended. So that's happening as a separate process from the community meetings that were held at various parks around the city. So I think one in each of the police precincts. So from the feedback that we all received at those community meetings, we will be summarizing that and providing that information to the search firm, and they will take that information along with the information they've gathered from stakeholder interviews and put together a comprehensive job description and sort of a marketing piece for the position, and then use that to reach out proactively to potential candidates around the country, as well as accepting applications that come to the search firm.
You heard a lot of community feedback. I think a couple hundred people showed up between those 5 public meetings in person. And I'm curious what feedback stood out to you and what the commonalities were from community members.
Well, there was quite a bit of variety in the feedback we received, and yet there were themes that I feel like came through. One is somebody with a proven track record of leading culture change within a police department. Not somebody who can just talk about it theoretically, but somebody who's actually demonstrated that they're capable of that kind of leadership. Also, I heard the word accountability a lot. People want somebody who is accountable to the community at large. They also want someone who's going to have the strength to hold individual officers accountable for their behavior. People really want somebody who can get to know the various communities in Minneapolis. We have one city, but at the same time, we have different neighborhoods, and people have different needs in different areas of the city. And so somebody who can really get to know community members and walk among us and get to know people, not just have some theoretical understanding of the city and leave the rest to the individual officers. So that's kind of a tall order, along with the fact that I think many people really felt that only somebody from outside the Minneapolis Police Department, possibly even from outside of Minnesota, could do this. There were mixed feelings on that. Definitely somebody who can lead in a anti-racist way.
Whoever this person is, right, we all know, I think it's fair to say, they inherit an understaffed department. They inherit a department that's under scrutiny,
We had the Department of Human Rights report that came out during this feedback process. We're still being federally investigated as a city police department. And so this is something I pass on to you that I've heard from a lot of people who would want this job.
I think that there's somebody who's willing to rise to the occasion and who really wants to drive this sort of change. Like I said, I tend to be an optimistic person by nature, and it seems like when society has needed it, there's always been somebody who will rise to the occasion and take the leadership. And you know, I personally love the city. I've lived almost all of my life in the city of Minneapolis, and I'm not going to give up on it. And I think there's somebody out there who can do this.
I know it's not about what you want. You've said that to me before. This is not about you giving your input about exactly what you want. But that being said, you do live in the city and apparently are active enough that they would tap you for this. So what's top on your wish list from whoever this person will be?
You know, I think that sort of intangible quality of leadership and willingness to serve as an example, and I think my own feelings really echo the feedback that I heard at the community meetings. You know, we all want every neighborhood to be safe and secure, but we also want every individual to be safe from the police. There needs to be a significant culture change within the Minneapolis police. And at the same time, we're seeing a rise in violent crime, and we need to address that too.
Well, you certainly are part of something historic. It sounds sort of complicated and it's not painless, but it is important, and there are a lot of people who are invested in this decision.
I think the committee overall is made up of people who care very deeply about the city and come from different neighborhoods within the city and different perspectives, different personal histories. And I think that's really important in making this decision. And I'm glad that, you know, the mayor will be making a selection, but the city council then also has to approve that person. And so I hope there will be a great deal of buy-in. Nobody's perfect. We're certainly not going to please everyone with the ultimate choice of this individual, but my hope is that we find a really great person to take us to a new era in Minneapolis policing.
And we have takeaways from the community input sessions in this story on WCCO.com, as well as details on the search process. We'll be right back.